3 days after her husband died, the bank froze every account she had, and nobody would tell her why. At 72 years old, Margaret Lewis discovered something terrifying. The man she trusted for 46 years had been hiding almost everything. Not another woman, not gambling, something worse, debt, missing accounts, and one signature she didn't remember signing. Margaret still had sympathy cards on the dining table when the first call came. A woman from the bank spoke softly, too softly.
Mrs. Lewis, we need you to come in immediately.
Margaret thought maybe it was paperwork, maybe life insurance, maybe some routine mistake. She had no idea she was about to discover her retirement no longer existed.
Your available balance is $0.
And that was the moment the grief changed. Because now she wasn't just mourning her husband. She was afraid of surviving him.
For 46 years, George handled the money, the taxes, the retirement accounts, the passwords. Margaret trusted him completely. Why wouldn't she? He paid every bill on time. They owned a home. They traveled twice a year. Nothing looked wrong. That's what terrified her later. Nothing looked wrong. The second letter arrived 4 days after the funeral. Final notice. Past due, $93,000. Margaret thought it was a scam until more arrived. Credit cards she'd never seen. Loans she didn't recognize, an RV financing account in Arizona, and then a reverse mortgage application, partially completed, with her signature on it.
I don't remember signing that.
But the worst discovery wasn't the debt. It was who had been helping George hide it.
Margaret called George's financial advisor, a man named Daniel Reeves. She trusted him too. Daniel had attended their Christmas dinners. He hugged her at the funeral. He cried. Then he said something strange.
George told me not to overwhelm you with the details.
Overwhelm her? Margaret suddenly realized nobody had ever explained their finances to her. Not once. Daniel spoke carefully, too carefully. There had been market setbacks, some liquidity problems, temporary borrowing. But Margaret noticed something. Every answer sounded rehearsed, and every sentence avoided numbers. Then her grandson found something George forgot to shred, a withdrawal statement. $480,000 missing, transferred 18 months earlier. Margaret couldn't sleep anymore. At night, she replayed conversations from years earlier. Tiny moments. George getting angry when she asked questions. George changing computer passwords. George saying,
"Don't worry about it. I've got it handled."
Then her daughter discovered an email account. Not George's normal one, a second account. Filled with loan notices, collection warnings, desperate messages. George had been borrowing money to cover investment losses, then borrowing more money to hide the first borrowed money, and somewhere in the middle of it, he stopped telling the truth, to everyone, including himself. Margaret stared at the screen for almost an hour, then whispered something heartbreaking. Margaret.
I don't know who my husband was anymore.
The scammers started calling 2 weeks later. This part shocked investigators later. Someone had targeted Margaret directly after George's obituary appeared online. One caller pretended to be Medicare.
Another claimed her Social Security number had been compromised. Then someone called pretending to be her bank, and somehow they knew George had died. 3 calls a day, sometimes 5, always urgent, always polite, always terrifying. Margaret almost gave them access. She later admitted something most victims never say out loud.
I was so scared. I just wanted someone to tell me what to do.
But one call changed everything, because the voice sounded familiar, very familiar.
Margaret's oldest son, David, had recently started helping with paperwork. At first, he seemed supportive, protective, responsible. Then Margaret noticed money disappearing, small amounts, groceries, cash withdrawals, gift cards. One afternoon, her granddaughter checked Margaret's banking app and froze. Someone had added a secondary user, David. Margaret confronted him. He exploded, yelling, blaming, accusing her of forgetting things. That moment broke something inside her, not because of the money, because suddenly she understood how vulnerable aging really was. The people closest to you sometimes see fear before they see family. Margaret stopped turning lights on at night. She wanted to save money. The house felt different now. Too quiet, too expensive, too large for one person. She began skipping medications to stretch her budget. Then came the hospital bill, $18,400, not covered. For the first time in her life, Margaret considered selling the home. The same home where she raised children, celebrated anniversaries, buried pets in the backyard. Retirement fear doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives silently, one unopened envelope at a time. Then something unexpected happened. Margaret's granddaughter, Claire, started reviewing old records, every statement, every withdrawal, every loan, for 3 straight weekends. Claire discovered Daniel, the financial advisor, had moved George into high-fee investments for years, products George barely understood, products generating massive commissions. And buried deep in the paperwork was something devastating. George had tried to cancel them twice, but the paperwork was never processed, which meant the retirement collapse may not have been an accident. Margaret eventually reported everything: the advisor, the suspicious transfers, the unauthorized access. It took 11 months, hundreds of phone calls, and more emotional exhaustion than she thought a human being could survive. But slowly, small victories appeared: fraud protections, recovered funds, community support, a local widows group. Margaret started learning things George never taught her: how to access accounts, how to read statements, how to ask questions without feeling embarrassed. And one afternoon, she did something tiny that felt enormous. She answered a scam call and hung up first. That was the moment she realized fear was no longer controlling her. Margaret still misses her husband every day. But grief became complicated, because love and betrayal can exist in the same memory. That truth is uncomfortable, especially for people who spent decades trusting someone completely. If there's one lesson hidden inside stories like this, it's not just about money. It's about silence. The silence around passwords, debt, accounts, fear. The silence that leaves people unprepared until life becomes survival.
And sometimes the most dangerous financial mistake is believing there will always be more time to talk about it. If someone in your life handles all the finances, have the conversation now, not later. Now. Because after the funeral, questions become very expensive.